moment here and look at our next essay assignment. And I want to draw your attention to this one. This essay is you are going to report on a superhero or supervillain. Now, quickly, I want to talk about the due dates, and then I'm going to skip ahead to the more pertinent information, considering some information in a PowerPoint, and then a lot of it is in the sample, and there will be a further example provided to you guys over the next coming days. Now, you'll see here that next Wednesday and Thursday, so a week from our peer review this week, which takes place starting on Wednesday, and you should have your essay ready for that. We will have the essay peer review for this one as well. Same process will be used on both, but there will be a different set of guiding questions. Then, of course, it'll follow a very similar pattern to what we did. Friday, rough draft, final draft on Monday. Now, the basic premise of this assignment is you're going to pick a superhero or supervillain character and report on them, so that when we read your report, we should be able to walk away with it with a very general, consistent idea of, okay, this is what this character is about. All right? This is who that character is. Now, to help best illustrate that, I'm going to skip down here and talk about some of the material down here at the beginning. And let me start with the PowerPoint. Okay. So, there's a section in an older book I used to use that starts this chapter that many kinds of writing report information talks about. Newspaper, textbooks, history, writing, websites provide, and then different kinds of products. For example, they use J.Crew about people such as Johnny Depp and institutions such as the Smithsonian. And the purpose of these kinds of places and information is simply that, to report information. Now, what typically goes into a information essay is you will have a tightly focused specific topic, which by picking your superhero or supervillain, you'll have done that. All right. You'll need to provide a clear definition. So if you say pick Captain America, you're going to want to provide a clear definition of what defines a superhero. If you were to pick, say, Dr. Doom or Magneto or Thanos, you would obviously want to provide us with a clear definition of a supervillain. Now, interestingly enough, if you pick a character like Deadpool, he's not quite a superhero, but he's not a supervillain. He falls into another category called an anti-hero, which you would then provide a definition for that. So the key thing is you need to have a tightly focused topic, which you will do so because you'll pick a character. You'll then need to provide us a definition of whether that character is a superhero or a supervillain or sometimes an anti-hero. And then a well-researched information. So you're going to have to go beyond just one source. All right. And we'll talk a little bit more about this later in the week. But you're going to go beyond just simply one source and actually looking for information about your character. You're going to actually have to go out there, and I'm going to ask you to try and find me 3 external sources to help you fill in the information that you're going to need to provide to us. Now it says here, and of course this is just rehashing a little bit here of what I said, you have one superhero or supervillain. Clear definitions. Now this is important because if you're talking about a superhero, you want us to know what exactly is a superhero. Don't assume we know these things. If you're a supervillain, define it for us. These things help us to make sure we clearly understand what kind of character you're talking about in your essay. Okay? And it's a helpful idea for us to make sure that the terminology and the terms of understanding are very clearly spelled out. And then accurate, well-researched information. You need to be able to research and cite information from sources in supporting and reporting your topic to an audience. You want to find good, accurate, and if possible, scholarly sources. That may not necessarily be as easy as something to do with what we're doing here because we're doing something with more inside the realm of pop culture. But that doesn't mean you can't find good, reliable sources, and that is something we'll probably definitely get around to talking about on Thursday. Oh my God, I think that's all I need to consider with you guys here. Keeping in mind that you're trying to take a neutral, non-biased start. Okay? All right. Oops. Let's cut that out. Cut this out. Now, I do have an example, but more importantly, I want to talk about the sample assignment sheet because this is even more important because in here, I have spelled out, again, you have subheadings, but I have specifically spelled out for you some particular information that I want you to be able to take note of. And I just realized here that I may have accidentally pulled up the wrong copy. So give me 1 second. I think I forgot to upload the new one, because I went back and I revised this specifically for you guys so that you guys could see. There we go. This is the one I want to take a look at, so that you guys could have a very clear picture of what you need to be looking for. So you'll see here, your first paragraph is an introduction with a thesis statement. We'll talk about that. Then you'll provide us with a definition paragraph where you're going to want to apply yourself by basically quoting a definition and going through the process of introducing it, integrating the quotation, citing it, and then explaining the quotation as it's relevant to what you're talking about. All right. And then after that, I have who, what, when, where, and a conclusion. So I have a couple other little sections for you to deal with. Each section should run roughly 2 paragraphs. And underneath each section, I have provided you with a series of sub-questions you can use to kind of guide the information you're looking for. And also, these are the questions that you should take 1, 2, 3 sentences, maybe whole paragraph to answer. So you'll see here for the first section here, what is the basic identity of the superhero or supervillain? Describe them. What is their alter ego? Do they have an alter ego? Do they have a secret identity? If it was, say, Spider-Man, that's Peter Parker. What do they do? So like, if you think about it this way, Spider-Man is Peter Parker. When he's not Peter Parker, he's typically a reporter or a photographer for the Daily Bugle. Okay? Who is the superhero or supervillain associated with? Do they associate with a group or other characters? Do they have a nemesis? A specific supervillain? Or if it's a supervillain, do they have a specific superhero they face off for? And what is the purpose or drive of this superhero or supervillain? What particularly seems to motivate them? Now, all that information is going to honestly require that you go find some source material for it to get answers. So these questions not only are what you're going to answer in terms of writing, these questions should help drive your research. All right? The next is another 2-paragraph section. I want you to answer, what does the superhero or supervillain do? What are their powers? Does their characters have a particularly target audience they appeal to? Like, for example, Spider-Man often appeals to young boys, young men. You know, depending on certain characters, they tend to particularly appeal to certain groups. The next section, another 2 paragraphs. Now, we're getting a little bit away from the fictional world and more into the real world, because you'll see here, I ask, when and where was the character created? Who created the character? Where did the character first appear? Comic book, movie, etc. So, for example, if I was doing Spider-Man, I would probably talk about in 1961, Stan Lee and Steve Ditko who created this one. They came up with Spider-Man. How'd they come up with that process? He appeared in Amazing Fantasy number 15. I would elaborate there. The last section, another 2 paragraphs, is what is this character's impact and role inside the larger culture today? Okay, where does the character belong today in our pop culture? What is the character's influence? What other mediums besides comics, like, do they appear in movies, cartoons, TV shows? That's the kind of thing that you would need to put in there. And all these things that you're going to have to find are going to require that you find outside information, for which you're going to find at minimum 3, and you should use that information to then create a works cited page, which I think we'll hopefully get around to talking about perhaps next Monday. Okay? So that is our basic walkthrough of Essay 2. And the example I do have attached, please note that it actually has it's an actual version where I've gone through and done some commenting. So you'll see some things where some students, what they have produced for me, but this particular example has some problematic elements that need to be fixed. Okay? So you can kind of get this one as a what not to do.